Alright guys, we're going to continue on with a review of a lesson plan. We're going to talk about kind of the most important part of the lesson plan, and I think the part where we were lacking the most is this body, the big part of the lesson plan, or your procedure. Okay, so take a minute and on your Edpuzzle, react to this quote: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Also add these terms into your Kim sheet. So direct instruction, this is when the teacher is giving the information to the students. Guided practice is when the teacher is having the students do things, but they're also like helping the students still do things as the students are kind of learning and trying things out on their own. And then independent practice is when the students kind of take it on all on their own. The teacher kind of steps back and sees what the students can do on their own without the teacher helping throughout. So you'll often hear the term I do, which is the direct instruction, we do, which is the guided practice, and then independent practice is the you do. So you'll hear people refer to that often as the, again, direct instruction, I do, guided practice, we do, independent practice is the you do. It's really like the major basis of a lesson plan. Okay, so remember that the lesson plan, the process part describes how the teacher is going to deliver that content. So that's why it's super crucial to take some time and really figure out how are you going to get the content across. So take a minute, think about this. The body of a lesson is like a roadmap. Why do you think that is so? Go ahead and answer that on Edpuzzle. So the body of a lesson plan maps out the path the teacher will follow and provides direction to how their students will meet the lesson objectives. So remember, our goal is after we have our standard, we then write an objective that connects to that standard. And then our whole lesson is based off trying to make sure that we meet that objective. And so we need that roadmap. We need those directions on how are we going to make sure our students meet our direction. This needs to meet our objective. This needs to be pretty specific. Okay, so it's organized and sequential. It helps the teacher think through the instruction. Like, what are you going to say? Write it. Write down what you're actually going to say in this part. That will help you. It's like a script. You wouldn't put on a play without some sort of script. Think of your lesson as a play, essentially. You're acting. You've got to get this information across. You need a script, okay? In addition, think about what activities they're going to be doing to understand what you're trying to get across to them. It identifies the specific steps of the lesson. And it helps you when you start thinking about this, it helps you think about, this part right here is a little weak. I bet this is going to be a problem. How can I make that better when you start to like put the steps out in order, okay? And then you want to make sure that you're not like jumping from one idea to another. You want it just to kind of flow smoothly within your classroom and your lesson. And so this is a good place to make sure that your lesson plan flows smoothly, okay? So the lesson plan body is the meat and potatoes of the lesson plan, okay? It really focuses on two things. The teacher actions, okay? Here it's going to describe what the teacher is going to say, again, script it, and do during instruction. But it's also going to describe what the students are going to be saying and doing. And I think that's something that was missed a lot in a lot of your last lesson plans. So for instance, it would have your actions. It would say, go over Smartboard. Okay, well, what's on the Smartboard? What are you going to say at each of those slides? Are you going to model right there? Are you going to stop and do, let's say you're doing a math lesson. Are you going to stop right at this point and walk through how to do it? You have to think about those things. And so you have to think about those teacher actions, but also why you're giving the notes or why you're up there modeling. What do the students do? Going to tell you if you don't have them doing something, they're going to tune you out. You need to have them doing something. Why you have teacher actions, students need to have actions as well. And then, so it goes beyond just here's the assignment I'm going to give. You need to specifically explain what the students will be doing and when throughout your main part of your lesson plan, the body of your lesson plan, okay? So take a minute, write a tweet to a friend summarizing the purpose of a well-planned instruction in a lesson plan. So you can only use the 280 characters. Sorry, it says be prepared to share. You're obviously not going to share. You're going to put that on Edpuzzle. So the kind of three parts of the process part of the lesson plan is you have that direct instruction. That's this part here, direct instruction. That's the I do. So how are you going to get that direct instruction across? Then you have the guided practice, which is its own little part on our blank lesson plan. So after you get your instruction across, what are you going to say? What are you going to do to get your instruction across? That's the I do. Then what are we doing together, the teacher and the student? What are the student actions? What are the teacher actions during this guided practice part? So like, what are you asking? What are you having the kids do? And then independent practice, what are the students? That's that student action. That's so I do, we do, you do. That's the you do part, okay? And that's when kind of you've taken a step back and you let the kids kind of do it on their own and figure it out. And I say on their own, that can still be in groups, that can still be in partners, but the kids are working together to figure out the independent practice. You as the teacher are taking a step back and letting them show you what they've learned. Okay, so direct instruction, that is led by the teacher. And in this, it includes a step-by-step procedure instructions for the lesson. Again, step-by-step. I need to see that be more specific in your lesson plans, okay? And again, that acts as your guide or your script for what you're going to be teaching. It includes descriptions of how the teacher will model new skills and also check for understanding as you are modeling. So remember, you want to take steps where you like stop in the middle, like on Edpuzzle, I have little steps where you're write a tweet. That is a check for understanding to make sure that we are all on the same page, okay? So here is a process. Take a minute, read it, and then on Edpuzzle, please explain how this represents direct instruction. Guided practice, this is the interactive instruction between the student and the teacher. So again, this is the we do part. It includes activities that allow students to practice new learned skills and concepts. Students are instructed to work again in partners. They could even work on this, the we do part, but it's much more structured. So it might be, I a lot of times will tell my English students, read this, discuss with your partner, and then we discuss as a group. That's the we do part still. So I'm still in the we do part. That's the guided practice. If I just tell them to read this and do it, that's now independent practice. So you need to have that step in between from the direct instruction to the independent practice where they get to practice the skills with somebody else and with you there to help guide them as they work. Okay, so read this process and then on Edpuzzle, explain how this is an example of guided practice. Okay, independent practice. Again, this allows students time to independently use critical thinking skills to reinforce learning. This is when I'm going to assign independent classwork, homework, project, or activity. And again, it needs to make sure that that independent practice connects to your objective and to the other things that you have been practicing, the I do, we do part. So sometimes students will just throw in an independent practice and it does not connect to what the objective is, what the standard is. So you need to make sure all of that is aligned, meaning they all match. So take a look at this, read it, and on Edpuzzle, explain how it represents independent practice. Okay, respond to the following. What have I learned? So what difference does it make? And what can I do with what I have learned? Okay, closure. This is also one that was difficult for students when we did lesson plans before. So I want you to think about the last time you went to the doctor and how did the doctor communicate the key points at the end of the visit and what was the purpose of this and why is it important? So go ahead and answer that in Edpuzzle. So a doctor provides you with closure or a summary of your visit, and this is to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the key points from your visit and to clarify any misunderstandings. It's the same thing for teachers. So on your Kim chart, go ahead and add closure and reflection. Closure is a procedure at the end of a lesson in which learning is revisited and evaluated. Reflection is analyzing personal experience that encourages insight and consideration. I'm gonna skip that part. Passing the torch. With the lesson closure, the teacher hands the torch to the learners who are now actively the teachers of the lesson objectives. So they're now showing, here is what I learned from here, okay? It's a natural stopping point in a lesson. It takes students back to the objective and is relevant to what they have learned. A lot of times closure doesn't have to be at the end of a class period. It might be at the end of a lesson. And sometimes you might have 2 lessons in the same class period, so you might have to divide it up, and that's okay. But typically closure is at the end of a class period, okay? And it also keeps the big picture in view. It can relate learning to other topics. It can raise questions to ponder in anticipation of what is to come, okay? It is an act conducted by the learner. So the learner is doing the closure. It should last 5 to 7 minutes. It could be more, but it should be about that. It is not a teacher activity, and it is not a place to introduce new learning. And so you really need to make sure that you take some time to plan closure for each lesson. Teachers use closure to wrap up the end of a lesson, to check for understanding, to emphasize key concepts, to tie up any loose ends, to help students internalize knowledge or identify areas that need clarification. Okay? For students, they find it helpful to summarize and review key learnings. It helps them internalize learning. It can help them identify areas that they might still be confused on. It gives them time to transfer concepts to potential new situations, and it sets the stage for the next phase of learning, okay? So take a minute and think about, if you were teaching this lesson right now, which obviously is not an ideal lesson, but it is what it is, how might you do closure for this activity or lesson? Okay, so that is the end of our review. These were key concepts that I thought that you guys struggled with when we did lesson plans before. It's not by any means all the parts of the lesson plan. That slide is up on Classroom for you, but it's just places where we were struggling before that I thought we needed some clarification.